than having a place of prominence. You know, the fig tree said, truth of the matter is, I'm producing figs and people like my figs. The vine says, I am producing wine and that cheers God and man. That makes God happy. That makes people happy. You know, the fig tree, the olive tree, the vine, they all said, I am being useful. I am serving a function. I am meeting a need. And the truth is, in ministry, being useful means more than being the king of the trees. You know, ask yourself, how important is being the king of the trees? You know, let me teach you something just in case you didn't know it. Earthly promotion is worthless. It really is worthless. You know, and too many times in ministry, we focus so much on having a title. Oh, just give me a title. I just knew they were going to ask me to be youth pastor. That's what I want. I need a title, or I need an office. You know, I need a position. And the truth of the matter is that titles are really rather pointless. And you know, consider this: titles most often are temporary. 25 years ago at teen camp, this is the 25th anniversary of Mike Padgett being crowned Camp King. Yeah, isn't that wonderful? 25 years ago, quarter of a century ago, I was Camp King during teen camp. You know what? My name is not anywhere at all on this campground's designated. You know, none of you would know that if I hadn't told you, right? You wouldn't have known that. So we're talking about 25, you know, and here's the thing about titles. You know what? They gave me that title, they gave me that crown 25 years ago. You know what they did? A year later, they turned around and took that crown, they took that title, and they gave that to the likes of Scott Landis. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Titles are pointless. Titles are useless. When, you know, they're not very useful. And the truth is, I would rather be useful behind the scenes. I'd rather make an impact behind the scenes than to be in the limelight and people know my name. And it's more important because we're going to discover in ministry that our significance, the thing that really gives our life meaning and purpose, is not, you know, the promotion, and it's not the attention that we gather. It is that feeling inside that what I'm doing really matters. That my life really, that we can make an impact in people's lives. We can make an impact. We can make a difference. You know, there was once upon a time that I was the assistant national youth director. And so I know what it is to have a title. And during the course of the time that I was the assistant national youth director and pastor in the church in Middlesboro, one of my closest friends died unexpectedly. Young man in his mid-30s, 35 years old, died, left behind a precious wife, and left behind a 5-year-old daughter. And one of the closest friends and the biggest supporters that I had in pastoral ministry passed away during that time. And as I stood beside of his casket after having preached the funeral message, delivered the eulogy, and I watched as one by one people from the church and people from the community, I watched some of the most affluent, some of the wealthiest people in our town pass by that casket paying respects, and I watched some of the poorest people in town pass by that casket, and as one by one, all of these friends from the community, these family members, these people from the church, as they all passed by and made their last respects, and the time came for that young widow to come and to say goodbye to the dearest thing on earth to her, she looked at me from the front pew of the funeral home and extended her hand my direction as if to say, come and help me. I'm going to tell you something. When I stepped away from that casket for long enough, when her hand touched my hand, for me to escort her to the casket to say goodbye to the dearest on earth, there has never been a moment in my life where I felt like what I do matters more than in that moment. And I knew in that moment God called me to pastor. And it was in that moment, I was the assistant national youth director. I'm in line for promotion, right? I'm going to be the national youth director someday. That's the way that it works, right? That's the way politics works in the church. But I knew in that moment, I knew that I was a pastor. Contrary to what some people think, I'm a very good pastor, right? But the truth is, being useful, feeling like what you're doing matters is more important. Making an impact is more important than promotion. And people talk about, well, don't you, what about this, and couldn't you do this, and couldn't you, what about, I am making an impact in the city where God has called me. I had a conversation not too long ago with a young preacher, and he was sharing with me how mad he was at God. He was just being honest with me, sharing with me how mad he was at God. And what he was mad at God about was that he thought that by this point in his ministry, he should be Billy Graham. I mean, by this point in my ministry, there ought to be auditoriums rented. There ought to be coliseums, all over the world. He was being serious. He was mad at God that by this point he was not at. The truth of the matter is, God has called us to be useful. God has called us to make an impact, and we can make an impact in people's lives. And too many times we focus further outside. We start thinking, I want to, listen, I don't want to be a dream shatterer. I don't want to be a dream shatterer this morning, anything like that. Chances are, there's only one Billy Graham, right? Chances are, most of you are never going to have a television ministry. Most of you are never going to be world evangelists. But each of you has the potential to make an impact in the place where God has called you. That's what you've got to focus on. I came to the realization sometime back, I'm a pastor in a church in a city of 10,000 people. And, I'm not going to, I have no interest in television ministry. I have no interest in worldwide evangelism. But I have noticed God is using me to make an impact in that city, in that town, where I'm called upon on a regular basis from people that I don't know because in that town I've made an impact. You can change the city where you live in. You can make an eternal impact in people's lives. Just by doing what God has called you to do. As long as we're thinking about reigning over the trees, as long as we're thinking about the next title or the next promotion, or we're seeking some office or what have you, we're never going to be able to focus on being where we are now and letting God use us to the full potential that God has put inside of us. When I was a young preacher, Pastor Duran Dixon shared with me one time what Ira Moses had said to him. And most of you, probably know that Ira Moses is a former general overseer in our organization. But Ira Moses had told Brother Dixon, he said, never seek an office. He said, let the office seek you. And I've thought a lot about that through the years, and I would add to that. That's the Ira Moses axiom. I would add to that the Mike Padgett postulate. In fact, run from that office. Run from it as hard as you can run from it. And if it still catches you, if it still catches up to you, if it still finds you, then fulfill it. But seek. Jesus did not come looking for an office. He didn't come looking for a title. He didn't come looking for a position. He didn't come looking for a place of prominence. He came to wash disciples' feet. And making an impact is the key. Let me tell you a third lesson from Jotham's parable. Self-centeredness is destructive. The king of the trees said, "Oh yeah, make me a bramble bush. Make me the king. I am ready for this. Yeah, just show me where the crown's at." Right? that selfishness. There's no place in ministry for selfishness. We're come to pour out, to give. I am willing to spend and be spent for ministry. It's not about me, it's about the kingdom. It's about emptying myself. And genuine ministry is always going to empty. Self-centeredness is destructive. Where is the context from our text? Where is it that these men are gathering together? Anybody remember from what I read the city that they're at? When Jotham gives this parable, it's in the city of Shechem. And Shechem is an interesting place because Shechem got its name, by the way, from a man by the name of Shechem. And if you go back in the book of Genesis, you will discover who Shechem was. Shechem was a man who was interested in marrying Jacob's daughter. And he was interested in marrying Dinah after he raped her. I want this woman. I want this woman so bad. And so rather than going through the proper channels and talking to Jacob and working out a dowry, Shechem just took it upon himself. In his own self-will, he said, I'm going to make her mine. And he made her his. And then afterwards, he said, I want to keep her. I want this woman. And so he began to negotiate with Jacob and when Jacob's brother and Levi and Simeon said, I'll tell you what, you can marry our sister, but you're going to have to become circumcised like the rest, like we are. Like the Israelites. If you and all the men in your town will become circumcised like we are, then you can marry, and we'll marry some of your women, and we'll just all be one big happy family. And so the men of Shechem, they did that. They said,